Hey, Niman, we're live.
Hey, that's awesome.
Thanks very much for sharing some of your precious time. Thanks for coming on. It's good to have you.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
No worries. So, got a few people in the chat. See some common faces as well. Alberto, how you doing? Make sure you drop a message to confirm you can hear us, see us, all that good stuff. It's always worth checking at the start of a live stream before carrying on.
Yeah.
I can see you perfectly. Cool. Glenn, good to see you. I can see you lurking in there as well.
We got
Nice.
Donna, we
Cool.
got Glenn. Hey guys, everyone.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. So, is this the first live stream for anybody, or we got seasoned pros in here? I know Glenn is a seasoned pro. I don't think he's missed one yet, although I'm not sure if he missed Ben's one. So this live stream is the first of many to come, and it is what's called a Makerpad Spotlight. So we'll be highlighting some of the best tools that we work with for the benefit of everybody. I think we get the opportunity, and we're really lucky in having the ability to kind of like dive in early doors and see what these new no-code tools can do. And one of which being obviously is something which has, I think, previously been untapped by no-code products before. So we've kind of gone from the evolution of website builders through to automation tools and now into stuff like data science without code, and now to predictions, analytics, and machine learning with a tool like Obviously. So I will hand over the introduction reins to Niman, and you can give probably a more comprehensive introduction to you guys and what you do, and then we will run and dive straight into a demo of your product. That's good with you.
Cool. So yeah, I'll give you a quick background. About a year back, I was working at a small and growing company in San Francisco, and I was the only data engineer at the company. And what used to happen was a lot of non-tech business users, they would come up to me and they would ask me questions around data science. So something as simple as, hey, give me a list of customers that do XYZ, or help me predict which customers are going to take this action. And every time they had a question, I had to kind of build out a little either a machine learning algorithm or some complex script to get them the data. And that's where the light bulb first struck. The idea was, why is it that the non-tech business users, they're the ones asking questions, but all the tools to answer them are made for technical people like myself. So can we
Mm.
build a tool which makes it incredibly easy for anyone to do data science without having to write code? So that's where obviously AI truly, really started. So today it's a no-code machine learning tool that enables anyone to just plug in their data. Then they get a Google-like search bar where they can ask a question in natural language. And the question could be either a predictive question where they can say predict XYZ, or deep dive into their data and say, hey, find me data that has this, that, and something else. So either way, you plug in the data, you ask a question, and in less than a minute, you get the results back. And that's the kind of experience that we're delivering with Obviously today.
Nice. I like it how you kind of summed that up really succinctly, and but actually, what's actually going on behind the scenes is far more complicated than how
Yeah.
you phrased it. Because if we can get to a stage where you can actually ask questions in natural language, that
Mhm.
is almost the ultimate abstraction layer on top. So this is what we're trying to get
Exactly.
to. So
Yeah.
when I first saw behind the scenes of Obviously, and when you showed me the first demo, I was blown away by it. So
Mhm.
hopefully it'll do the same for everybody else. So
Yeah.
if you're ready to do so, we can dive straight in unless anybody's got any upfront questions you want to ask before we showcase the actual product. Give everybody a chance. If no one's going to type, we can dive straight in. So, Nimin, if you want to share your screen, I will hand over the reins to you and you can show off the power of Obviously.
Cool. So let's jump into the demo. But before that, I just want to take a moment to thank all of you guys that are here. I'm seeing on chat, I'm seeing Alberto, I'm seeing Donna, I'm seeing Glenn, and Alexander. So thank you guys for jumping in. Super excited to show you what we've got here today. So let me start by sharing my screen. This is the Obviously.AI platform. And today what we're going to do is we're going to be using a historical data set, and we will build a machine learning model that will predict something from the data set. So to do that, let me first walk you through the data set and give you a little bit of context about what it is. And then we can jump into Obviously.AI. Another quick note, I don't have my chat open. So Tom, feel free to interrupt me if there's a chat.
No problem at all.
Cool. So I'm going to open up this CSV file right here that I've got that we're going to be using for predictions today. So this CSV file is called AT&T churn, which means a list of users that use AT&T phone service and have decided to cancel their plan and switch over to some other phone service. So let's go through the data real quick to give us some background about what we're dealing with, and then we'll jump right into Obviously.AI. So the first thing over here is to notice that in this data set, every single row is an individual customer. And for every customer, every column tells you something about that customer. So this column gives you the gender of the customer. This one tells you whether they're a senior citizen or not. What kind of internet service do they have? Do they have free Netflix with their AT&T plan? How much do they pay monthly? How do they make the payment, etc. So these are the kind of details that we have on each of our customers. We have a last column over here that's called churn, which says whether these customers have canceled their subscription in the past, yes or no. So this is a historical data set where we have a list of customers that have already canceled the subscription plan, and we can now use it to predict which new ones are likely to cancel. So that's what we're going to be doing today. So let's jump in. So the first thing that you do on Obviously.AI is you click this little plus icon to add your data set. You could connect a CSV file, any databases that you often work with, or if you're into marketing, you can also connect your CRM and CRM systems like Salesforce and HubSpot. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to jump in and just connect our CSV file that's right over here, and I'm going to call it AT&T churn. So incredibly easy to set up, incredibly easy to get started. Once you've connected your data source, it will preview right over here where you can see the columns and you can see the bunch of values in your data set. So let's jump in and use our natural language functionality to make a prediction. So to make a prediction, one of the most simple things you could do is ask a predictive question. So here we're going to ask a question. We're going to say, who will churn next month, for example. So we're trying to predict which current users are likely to churn in the upcoming month. I'm going to click go. And the moment I click go, Obviously.AI will automatically find the columns that are important to get started. And it'll show me here is the identifier column, which is usually the customer name, email, or customer ID. This is the column we want to predict, which in this case is churn. And these are all the other columns that it will use to better understand what causes people to cancel. So let's go ahead and click Start Prediction. When you do that, Obviously.AI starts by cleaning your data set. It kind of normalizes it, removes kind of random values, and then it builds a machine learning algorithm that is tailored for your data set and gives you the prediction results in under 30 seconds. So here we go. It was really fast because we got a result even before I could complete my sentence. So that's the kind of speed that we're shooting for. So let me go ahead and firstly rename my report. I'm going to call this cancel predictions. Let's do that. So the first thing that you see on the report is you get a sense of what are the factors that cause people to cancel prediction. So you start to see the top drivers by impact. So here, for example, we see that monthly charges has a big impact on people canceling. Second is internet service. You could also look at this graph and get a deeper dive on what it means. So for example, someone that's on a fiber optic internet service has about 71% chance of canceling, but someone that's on a DSL internet service has 82% chance of canceling. So you could get that detail for all different drivers on Obviously.AI. But
Just
the
have a
real power,
just a
go
quick
ahead.
question, just to hop in, from
Sure.
Alberto. He says, "Do we need to train the platform with the questions first, or is it based on column names? What customers are likely to churn? Column name is binary. Thanks."
Yeah, great question, Alberto. You don't need to train the platform with the questions first. You can use column names when you're asking questions. Our natural language engine can also find similar column names. So instead of saying who will churn, even if I say something like who will switch next month, it should be able to pick that up. One caveat to that is, say, for example, you have certain words that you use in your organization. You can always go to this definitions page and define a specific word that works for you. So let me do one real quick since we're on the topic. I'm going to go to this definitions page and I'm going to say, I'm going to pick this data set that we're using. And I have a new word that says average pay. That's a word that I always use within my organization. And I'm going to use it to create a definition where I'll say something like average pay is basically monthly charges divided by total charges. And I click save. So the next time I ask a question which has the word average pay, it will be able to understand what you mean by that. So those are the kind of
So,
things that you can do.
so that is for somebody if for when you're actually writing the question to query the database. You just want to know how internally in your team you will be communicating these questions when asking them in the system. Then you can actually go through and specify how the system receives that word
Correct.
or series of
Correct.
words.
Correct.
Awesome. Got it. It's extremely
Cool.
clever.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for your questions. We'll also kind of go back and run a couple of more detailed questions to get a sense of what it looks like as well. But let's go back to the report. So this is the report that told me what are the factors that cause people to cancel. Now we're going to jump in and we're going to try and predict new users that are likely to cancel. So here's something that I'm going to do. Let's say I have a person in mind. Let's give her a name called Tina, and let's give her an avatar. Now we can say that Tina is a senior citizen, for example. She has free Netflix. She's female, and say for example she pays $50 a month. I want to know if Tina is going to cancel. So I click save this persona, and it gives me a prediction for Tina, which is 66% in this case. Now, similarly, I can create more personas and identify how they're likely to behave. But say, for example, I have a CSV file, which is a new CSV file with a list of new customers. And you have the same factors that you had defined in the original file. I could use this list of new customers to now predict which customers are likely to cancel. So notice we don't have the cancellation column on the CSV file. So to do this, all I have to do is go to the Export Predictions tab and upload this new CSV file that we have over here. And almost instantly, it gives you the prediction results that are ready to use. So we're going to just open that up. And let me go ahead and freeze this column right over here called Customer ID. If you go all the way to the right, you see that for every single customer, you get the probability of them canceling. So 94% for this customer, 69%, 96%, so on and so forth. So for every single customer, you can get as micro as you want with export predictions or personas, where you define individual factors and predict whether they'll cancel, or you can get as macro as you want on drivers and see what causes people to cancel. You could also export these results using an API, if that's something that you want to set up. And that's a little bit of more technical thing to do.
Nice. How does it work? This question for myself, in terms of if, say, this was applicable, which obviously it is to
Mhm.
SaaS businesses, it's obviously
Mhm.
useful for recurring payments. How do you
Correct.
would you define something over time? What would you say if it was churning over a specific period? How would you manage things like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I have a new report over here, which we call MRR prediction, which stands for monthly recurring revenue. So we're trying to predict how much a customer is going to pay us monthly.
Yep.
So this is the prediction report for that. Now, instead of using a CSV file to make this prediction report, I used a database where new entries are coming in every single day. And so you get this little button over here where you could say update every month, week, or day. So you could set it to whatever you want to update it to. And as new entries come in, it will automatically learn from that and get better over time. So the prediction accuracy will just increase over time.
Love it. And yeah, that's awesome.
Mhm.
In terms of
Yeah.
how much, what's the threshold of data that you think when it starts becoming like really accurate and really useful? How does it, obviously it gets better over time, and the more data you feed
Right.
it, the more accurate it can be.
Correct.
What's the range, and where does it kind of kick in to become super useful?
Yeah, that's a great question. So generally, obviously, as you said, with more data, it gets better over time. But the most optimal amount of data that we've seen is a couple thousand rows. So if you have a couple thousand rows, let's say 1,500 rows to like 2,000 rows, that's a really good optimal amount of data to plug in, which can give you good results. It also depends on the kind of other columns that you have. So say, for example, you have more columns that tell you details about the customer, like their gender, their payment, their usage of the product. That will be more impactful than having columns that give you just the name or email or other details about the customer that are personal to them. So
Hmm,
we'll be looking at columns that are more product driven than personal information driven.
got it. So the
Mhm.
more different data points that you have on your customers,
Correct.
then obviously the more useful it's going to be.
Exactly.
Nice. Okay.
Mhm.
What sort of applications? Obviously, you've just recently opened up your
Mhm.
product for everybody to be able to sign up.
Yeah.
What interesting applications? I saw you actually published a prediction case study related to
Mhm.
fires recently, where
Correct.
you actually got some good results. Do you want to share that story?
Correct. Yeah, so that was one of the most interesting case study that our content folks did around taking some wildfire data that had happened in the past and predicting a few action items off of it. But personally, the interesting case studies that I've seen have been mostly around data with retail stores. That has been very exciting, where we've had a bunch of retail stores predict how many people are going to walk into their store. We've also seen interesting use cases with a bank that they used us to predict who's going to pay their credit card bills on time. So the applications are, you know, uh, fairly horizontal. You could
Mhm.
basically pick customer data and predict something about your customers, or you could pick data that is not necessarily about customers, but it could be about your stores. It could be about your product and try to predict something out of
Mhm. Awesome. We've got a question from Glenn. Having the API available is great, but are you making this even easier for the no coders by integrating with the likes of Parabola, Integromat, and Zapier? Maybe you have already. Question mark.
Yeah, great question, Glenn. I think that's one of the coolest ideas that I've heard, and we've been kind of hearing that from a bunch of customers as well. That is definitely something on our roadmap where we plan to integrate with other no-code automation tools. We don't have it today, but that's something that we're looking forward to do. In fact, I was talking with Tom the other day, and we came up with this idea where we could literally just use this API on Zapier, and every time a prediction hits a threshold, let's say new customers likelihood to cancel hits 80%, they automatically get an email. So we've been thinking of these ideas, and we'll try to formalize them very soon.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think once you start pulling like information through tools and through different phases,
Mm-hmm.
this is where it gets really interesting because I think
Yep.
traditionally these sort of roles and requirements before automation
Mm-hmm.
and these tools existed kind of sat siloed in their own areas of the business,
Right.
and none of them talked to each other until it came to, say, producing a report at the end of the month.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas being able to access this sort of information in real time
Mm-hmm.
and with internet automation fully integrated throughout the business, be it
Correct.
delivered into the hands of decision makers on a
Mm-hmm.
daily basis or weekly basis.
Mm-hmm.
It just enables everybody to have much more insight into what's going
Yeah.
on with
Uh,
data and with their customers. So,
yeah. Absolutely. And I think that's kind of our goal eventually, to plug into all no code tools and make the entire process, where machine learning is a part of the process, end to end, fully automated. So,
yeah, I'm just thinking of obviously through applications for
yeah.
people like marketers who obviously lead
Mhm.
scoring is very popular once the business scales
Exactly.
up. Like if you're getting tons of leads coming through, you want to make a prediction on historically how these leads turn out with
Hmm.
people who fit different personas. And then you can kind of prioritize what everyone should be spending their time on.
Correct. Correct.
That's
Exactly.
awesome.
Yeah.
We have another question. Okay, do you yeah, which one's up first? Do you store uploaded data? Is it encrypted? For the companies using your service, how do they update the privacy policy, for example?
Yeah, great question. So with the CSV files, we have to store the data, because the CSV files have to be stored somewhere. They are end-to-end encrypted, so you get that extra level of security with the data storage, and no one apart from you is able to access that CSV file. So those are the kind of things that we do with CSV files. With things like databases like MySQL, Postgres, or Salesforce and HubSpot, we don't store the data. In fact, every time we do a prediction, or there's an automatic prediction that's ran, it will ping your data source. So often your data doesn't truly leave your systems, or get stored anywhere else.
Right, got it. And still on that note, can I use Zapier and your API to keep adding data to your prediction to improve it? Let's say for every new signed up user, I push their info to Obviously using the API.
That's a great question. Theoretically, yes, but we've not done that before, nor have we given a shot to some other before. But that would be something for you to give a shot, and let us know how that plays out.
So how would we, let's say this is obviously something that is very interesting to some of us
Yeah.
sat on this stream right now. So how
Mhm.
would we go about that if say if we sat with the tool in front of us, how would we do that?
So I'm not a super expert on Zapier connections, so I can't tell you much about that. But
Yep.
with the API that we have, Zapier allows anyone to use an API and make calls on the API. So say, for example, you made this cancellation prediction report.
Yep.
You could use this API, plug it into Zapier, and as more goes in, the you could set it up so that anyone whose threshold to cancel hits a percentage, they'll automatically get a message.
Yep.
So the person email name and threshold is something that you can get from the Obviously API, and then the
Mhm.
rest you can set up on Zapier.
Okay. So with the I think we're talking about the dynamically uploading the CSV, is that something we'd have to do manually, or could you have a like a Google Sheet, for instance, which was self-updating, and then it was constantly plugged into that Google Sheet.
So currently we don't support Google Sheets, unfortunately, but we will be bringing that in our next version very soon. So if you're
Awesome.
connected with us on Twitter, you'll get a notification about it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I think it just being in obviously in the no code side of things, Google Sheets is popular because it powers a load of tools. Airtable is really
Exactly.
popular because you can feed these things with tons of integration. So
Mm-hmm.
if you could connect your Airtable base once and then feed it in with all this
Right.
dynamically updating data, the same with Google Sheets,
Mm-hmm.
and you just had this set up and scheduled to update or run a
Mm-hmm.
prediction every day, for instance, and then
Mm-hmm.
pass it down your workflow. That's where things get incredibly powerful. So
Exactly.
looking forward to that, definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously, if you look at the data that's available now, if we're talking for like big business, you can see
Mm-hmm.
there's already things like Salesforce in there as well. So I
Right.
presume that these plugins, these direct plugins and integrations are going to be incredibly powerful straight out of the box.
Exactly. Exactly. Right.
Um, Other question, can obviously AI handle also multi-dimensional questions, for example, a categorization of qualitative inputs?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. So let me show you two things that we didn't touch on today. So for the prediction part, we use the ask a natural language question. We asked a very simple question: who's going to churn next month? But you could get a little bit more nuanced and say predict churn where gender is female. Um, so now when you predict something like this, it gives a little filters column and it's saying we'll only be looking at female users and we'll be predicting churn for them. So this is an added dimension to the question that you're asking where you could ask more filters. Similarly, there is another tab called Analyze. So on the Predict tab, we would take a historical data set and look outwards. We would try to predict something off of it. On the Analyze tab, we're going inwards. And we're trying to look inwards and trying to say, hey, can you find me information in this huge data set that has these different dimensions? So let's do one simple thing. Say, for example, I have a new data set. I have a restaurant data set right over here. Um, and say I want to get um, let's say I want to get top 5 restaurants by highest rating. So literally all I have to do is say top 5 restaurants with highest rating. And literally when I ask a question like that, it gives me a list of top 5 restaurants with highest rating. I could also get more nuance on this and add multi-dimensional. So I could say restaurants that sell pasta and cost more than $100. Or I would ideally look for less than $100. Um, so unfortunately, there are no restaurants that do that.
It's
Um,
expensive
but
pasta.
that is the data set, unfortunately. But so these are the kind of things that you could look for where you're saying you can get more deeper into the questions that you ask and
Mhm.
get results.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What's the limits of the questions you ask? So let's say there's obviously always somebody available to break whatever you build. So where does
Of
this
course.
where do these sort of questions cap out?
Yeah, great question. So we have this little button on the top that says, what can I ask? So when you click that, it kind of shows you a bunch of functions that you could ask with natural language. So these are the functions that you could generally do. You could ask, show me all the data, show me the basic mathematics. And you can get into more details like show me the top X. You could say, show me data that groups these things or where dates and months are these. So these are the kind of limitations that you see. You can also see which are the features that are coming up soon. For example, something like multi-table joins is something that we have available in beta and we'll be releasing it out soon. So you could kind of get a sense of what kind of question you can ask. Say, for example, click one of them and you click count. It will tell you you can count. You can. These are the kind of questions you could ask. Count the number of X, how many customers there, da 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 da. So these are the things that you can ask, and obviously, yeah.
Amazing. And whereabouts is that? Sorry, I missed when you clicked through to that. Just so we know where to
Sure.
go.
So we're gonna
Is it
go right over here, which says "What can I ask?" on the nav
oh,
bar. Yeah,
literally at the top of the
next
screen.
to the upgrade button.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And what's the headphones next to it. So Glenn just asked a question, which was adding something like voice flow into the mix, having the voice element in your app,
Right.
so you could actually just ask it questions without even having to type.
That's a wonderful idea, and I really love that. Unfortunately, might be a little bit disappointing. This headset is for support and asking questions. So it basically will pop up the intercom for you
Perfect.
to ask questions. Um, Voice is certainly something that's on the back of our head as well.
Nice. Okay. So from a personal question for you, with obviously, where do you think this is going to potentially have the biggest impact? I know that thinking about applications to your tool, this obviously spans
Hmm.
far and wide.
Right.
But where do you think it's going to find its sweet spot? Kind of early on, and then a bit later.
So I think so obviously AI was made for a business analyst, right? And a business analyst is someone that works a lot with spreadsheets, a lot with data. But when it comes to programming, their knowledge is little limited, where they cannot write code, right? So that's the kind of persona we made obviously AI for, is someone who is looking to answer business questions, has the data, knows what it is, but just cannot code. And that's where we see the biggest impact, especially
Yep.
business analysts in small, medium businesses, where the business doesn't have a data science team or they cannot scale one. Those are the kind of businesses that will see the true impact of obviously AI, because they could ask questions, they could make predictions, and the entire workflow to go from I have a question to I want to here's the answer, the entire time it takes, that is reduced to seconds. So that's the biggest impact that we see happening today in the near term. In the long term, we also anticipate that a lot of larger enterprises will start to adopt this tool, because what we often see there is that, say there's a small department and there's a business analyst at in that smaller department, they often have to wait for weeks to get a single question answered from the data team. And when they have
Yep.
follow-ups, it becomes even more frustrating. So we see that adoption happening at a later stage, but for now, we're really focused on the business analyst persona, someone who knows the data but doesn't have the coding skills to get started.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, just to build on what you said, for people at SMBs who this function just doesn't exist in the business and now is available, so you don't
Right.
have to hire multiple people or even one person on a high
Mhm.
salary to be able
Mhm.
to um, ask the questions you want to ask. Now you can actually
Correct.
use this.
Correct.
And then also, I'm kind of thinking of this working in bigger teams. You could almost have a version of this, but permission for different job roles. So you could have like the salespeople restricted to querying
Mhm.
some preset some preset integrations depending on their
Mhm.
business unit, and then
Yeah.
they can ask some unique questions based on their unique job role, which might help them
Mhm.
do their job easier.
Right.
Yeah, see tons of.
Absolutely. I think that's a pretty good idea. Definitely something to think on. Get started.
So
Yeah.
a few more questions. She got a lot more
Mhm.
questions. Another one from Gustavo. Is there another way to get these predictions and analysis besides asking questions in plain English?
Great question, Gustavo. There is, in fact, a way to do that, especially for the predict page. On analyze, you have to ask questions in English. Um, on the predict page, you don't often have to ask a natural language question. In fact, to make the same churn report that we did, all you have to do is pick a column to predict. So you could just say, predict this column, and it will make the same report. Um, if you don't want to write down a long question in natural language.
Nice.
Mhm.
From Donna, I work with local startups that do not have as clean data sets as the big boys. What would you recommend?
All right,
What would your recommendations be to start using a service?
Donna, that's a great question. I really love that question, because the funny thing is that even boys don't have clean data sets in a lot of companies that we've seen. So that's a great question. One of the key
The
things we
opposite.
suggest is, what's that?
It could be the opposite, in fact.
Yeah. So it could be either way, because sometimes what happens is with bigger companies that we've seen, the data is kind of spread out in different silos. So often just getting that data together is a big problem for them. And even when they do, it's a big mess. So they also often don't have as much clean data as you would think. But regardless, one of the things that we do is we have a few recommendations of how to get clean data sets. If you're using external tools, you could always go to like Kaggle or data search where you can find external data. If you want to use your own internal data, you could export it using Google Sheets or from your Salesforce and CRM systems, which would be on general very clean. One of the things that we do is we have a dedicated data team so that anyone that's trying to get onboarded but has trouble with having clean data or cleaning the data, our team will help them smoothly onboard on that. Um, so that's one of the things that we do.
Amazing. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Hypothetically, one could use this to evaluate one's big ads being run on Facebook, for example, and then use the info to repeatedly refine the ads being run and who the ads are being shown to. Seems like you could do some good A/B tests too. Does this seem realistic?
That's a great point, and that is correct. You could do something like that. The challenge comes in nuances of the permissions that Facebook allows you to read. So, say for example, you wanted to target your ads to one specific person that you feel that obviously tells you has the highest chance of canceling. That's going to be difficult. But if you go to your report and you see the drivers, and in the drivers, you realize, for example, let's say senior citizen, you realize that people who are not a senior citizen have a higher chance of canceling. And then you go back to your Facebook and run the ads for a certain age group. Those are the kind of things that you can do. So fully automating with Facebook is something that's not possible today because of limitations that Facebook gives us. But you can always look at the data and build your campaigns on Facebook separately.
Nice. What's the upper limits on data sets at the moment?
So at the moment, the max amount of data sets that you can upload is 250 million rows of data. Anything more than that, we will need to sit down and work that out.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Another question. Does it work with other languages other than English, or does the data set and my questions need to be in English?
So as of now, so your data set itself does not need to be in English. This does not need to be in English. So that is fine. But when it comes to natural language questions, they are only supported in English right now. If you cannot write an English question, you can always just predict a column you want to. You can just always pick a column you want to predict, and it will automatically do the analysis for you.
Nice. Awesome. Let's have a look. I think Makerpad teams maybe provide data cleaning and consulting services valuable as software. Yeah, I think that that's actually a really good point with people bringing on board data sets, because data's been historically one of these things that's just been scary, and the
Right.
majority of people within work just have never touched it. And then
Mhm.
data analysis a few years ago became the buzzword, and big data and all this
Correct.
stuff became popular. And then people started to get um, more in tune with the power
Mhm.
of data, and then seeing obviously how
Correct.
powerful well used data can be. So
Mhm.
I think it comes at a good time, because I think people now have enough of a grasp on how useful data can be, but still
Exactly.
there's not too many tools out there that enable you to utilize it very effectively.
Right.
So yeah, the
Exactly.
fact that
And I think I'd love to, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Would love to just add a point to that is, as you mentioned, now the timing in terms like people having some data that they can play with has grown. But at the same time, one of the key changes that we've personally seen is the no code community has been growing incredibly. So congrats to all of you guys for making this happen. Because the no code community has started to kind of take the no code tools and use it more seriously. I believe that about 5 years back, the idea of no code was usually associated with someone who was a beginner. But now, even you could do so much more advanced stuff with no code. And that's what has powered tools like Obviously.AI. Like, for example, if you go to the MRR prediction, you can see that it's writing an algorithm that traditionally you would have to sit down and write a big Python script for. If we've seen tools like Webflow, where you can get into as much minute details as you can to make your websites. So these are the kind of changes that we're seeing, and it's really thanks to the people out there that are making this happen.
Yeah, and it's also obviously down to people who build the tools that give you more power to do more interesting
Right,
stuff. So you
right.
couldn't do any of this if we were still in the era of the original drag and drop builders. So
Hmm.
kudos to
Right.
you for actually providing us with some good tools as well.
Yeah.
So I think some interesting things going around in my head would be using some other tools that are available that do a really good job at fetching data and combining data into a form that's
Right.
useful.
Right.
You could actually pull in pull in data from external sources, combine that
Hmm.
with data that you already have. Maybe
Right.
you've got, say, like a small amount of customers, maybe slightly below the optimum
Hmm.
amount of rows or data points that we need. You can use
Hmm.
that, we can combine that with some data externally, which is going to be
Right.
equally as useful.
Hmm.
And then combine that and then push this into obviously to make some
Exactly.
useful stuff out of it.
Exactly.
Nice. Cool. Has anybody else got any questions for Niman, or is there anything that you want him to dive into that maybe he's skipped over, or that you've seen and would like to dive into a little bit more? One thing I would wanted to ask, just while people are thinking if they've got anything else to ask, is
Hmm.
how often can you run the queries or run the predictions?
So currently on
Can you
all,
schedule them?
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time?
And yeah, can we schedule? I think it says update every month. Can we update
Correct.
them more frequently?
So currently we only support month, week, or day. We don't support custom updates as of now, but that's something that we'll also be releasing with the next version that we'll be putting out. You could always manually update your report. So you click this little button, and it will manually update your report. So you could always do that. And in terms of number of questions you could ask, either on the predict tab or on the analyze tab, you could ask as many questions as you want and run as many prediction reports as you want. So there's no limit to that.
Love it. And let's talk about things like tiers. How does your tiers within, obviously, what features do you get
Mhm.
for which tier, and what would you be looking at?
For sure. So let me jump into our website. So if you go to our website and you click pricing, we got 3 tiers over here today. So the first one is the free tier. So if you are enthusiastic about your data, you just want to get a taste of what Obviously AI is, feel free to jump on this tier, get started with Obviously AI and play around. Um, so that's one of the key things. You get unlimited questions, unlimited integrations, and unlimited user seats, which means you can invite as many people as you want on your account. But you can only upload 100,000 rows of data. So that's the limitation for free. For Pro,
It's
you
fairly
get the same
generous.
things. Thank you. For Pro, you get the same thing, but you can hit 5 million rows of data. So if you are a small or medium business, and you have a bunch of data, either about your product, inventory, your app, you could upload that. And one of the key things you get is a dedicated data scientist. So this is someone from our team with a very deep background in data science that can help answer all your questions, even if they're not related to Obviously AI or what you're predicting. Even if you just want like, hey, explain me how this algorithm works, they will be able to do that, and kind of help you get up to speed with the things that you see on your screen. And the Pro Plus hits the 50 million rows of data, where you can get the dedicated data scientist, 24/7 support, and an on-premise setup. So if you are a medium business that wants to be truly very thorough about how the system is set up, and you want the system to be set up in your offices, that's something that you could do and get a 24/7 support on that.
Amazing. Do
Mhm.
you, with the amount of rows of data, is that accumulative, or say if you had some like data sets you could add in and then remove them and change, or is it like on like a monthly basis where if you add in and take away, it still counts towards your
So
total?
currently, the data is you could add in and remove and change. So a single data set should be 100,000 rows or less.
Okay.
You could always remove other data sets and add that data set in if that's what you like.
Yeah. Cool.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's what I was just talking about. Cool. So what does 2020 look like for obviously you're obviously your launches now, you're
Yes.
open for everybody,
Yes.
and you seem to have like what seems like a pretty complete feature set for the
Mhm.
majority, for a large range of
Mhm.
business, up to obviously
Right.
250 million rows of data.
Mhm.
What's coming down the pipeline this year then?
I think one of the key things that we're doing in this pipeline, well, first of all, one of the most important things that we want to do is we truly want to listen to all of our first users. So as you get started on, obviously, any feedback that you can give us is going to be incredibly valuable for us as we build this tool together. So that's one of the things. The second thing that we're doing is we're building more integrations. So as you said, integrating with Google Sheets. We've had some requests on integrating with Segment, where so these are the kind of integrations that we'll be building out over the year. And at the end, what we truly want to do is make the entire process of going from data to question to answer incredibly smooth. So we'll be finding ways in which, if you don't have a very clean data set, how can we make the process really smooth for you guys? So those are the kind of things that we'll be looking at and experimenting. But really, a lot of what we do will come from the feedback that you give us. So that's what we'll be looking forward to.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That sounds great. We'll make sure we keep it coming then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much for your time, Evan. We'll
Yeah.
just see if there's any more questions that come in. If you've got any last minute questions for Evan, make sure you get it in now. Yes, it's probably one of the most like exciting tools just because it's completely unique and where it sits in the ecosystem for me personally. So it was good to see
Thank you.
something like this actually come to life. Because now I think like talked briefly about data is now that data
Mhm.
is now accessible to
Okay.
less technical people. So I think like for these type of things, I think people using it and discovering it and
Mhm.
implementing it within business are still technical people, but they wouldn't be
Right.
technical as a data
Engineers.
scientist would be
Right.
technical. But
Right.
like anything that we're seeing more and more of, this will also augment the job of a data scientist, where
Hmm.
it would take them X amount of time to write their algorithms from scratch. Whereas if they could
Exactly.
use this, they could probably get 80% of the way in 20% of the time, and then use their skills on top of it to then do the custom work. So I think
Right.
tools
Exactly.
like this, advanced data tools are useful for everybody, but everybody uses them in different ways. So
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everybody, for coming on. I hope you enjoyed that peek into obviously and seeing behind the curtains. Hopefully, you've got some good ideas of how to use it and some good use cases. And make sure you jump on, create a free account, and
Yeah.
start plumbing in some data and making some cool predictions. And I know the team, they're really responsive on Twitter. So if you do any cool stuff, make sure you ping them because they're more than likely to share it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and more than happy to answer any questions. Don't hesitate to tweet us if you have any questions. And thank you so much for taking your time out to coming on this platform and checking us out. Thank you.
Awesome. The replay of this will be made available for everybody as well. So if you wanted to go back and rewatch it, you
Mhm.
can. So don't worry.
Cool.
Awesome. Thanks everybody. Have a good evening or good day wherever you are in the world, and speak to you soon.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Bye.